What's going on, Mets fans? Today we are joined by Ernest Dove, who's going to break down the coaching hires of the New York Mets. Which prospects are keepers and which prospects should we trade away? Could a big time pitcher be in the works for us? We're going to get to that and a lot more next on Metcast. What's going on, Met fans? Always, I am Ray with my co-host Dan Bartels of the New York Post and Ernest Dove, a Mets minor league reporter, as we all know. Make sure if you're enjoying our content, you like and subscribe. Consider becoming a member to be guaranteed to get your questions read live on air with us and with our guests. We just interviewed Joe DeMaio last week, an unbelievable interview, and John Harper right before him gave us great insight as to the major league level, and that's why I wanted to bring on Ernest Dove today to talk about not only just the major league level, but the minor league level and the prospects, which ones we need to keep, which ones we need to get rid of, and which ones are going to land us the big star this offseason. Ernest, how's it going?
It's going good, but now I feel like you're already implying I got to start parting ways with some prospects. So this is how we're going to start it off. I'm already sad and worried.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get right into the coaching hires. A lot of people hear about them today. Something that we addressed early in the offseason. Dan, I am relieved that we did this early. Something we spoke about. We didn't want this dragging out. Enough of the JD Martinez speculation, the Carlos Beltran speculation. Manny Ramirez wants to be a hitting coach. You got Jeff Albert coming in here. And Kai, what's his name?
Correa.
Forgetting it already. There you go. And I want to get a little bit low down. Obviously, we got the pitching coach coming up from the minor leagues. I mean, Ernest, you've been through there. You know the Mets have a system with how they deal with things. And something that I was listening to the radio earlier today on WFAN talking about how David Stearns came in and he implements a philosophy that he requires of all his coaches system-wide. So what can you give us on these guys today?
Well, that's the thing, too. So because I really wasn't putting a lot of names to the faces, to the status, to the tenure. And then they announced, Jeff Albert getting this promotion. And I know Jeff Passan has this weird title he was using. What is that, dude? Hitting coach? What are you? But I do know it sounds like some of the stuff, if he's been around for the last 2 years, specifically in this version of the hitting development coach level, it kind of goes with the same timeline that I was reporting even from last year. When I was talking to multiple staff behind the scenes, they were talking about the shock and awe of the hitting structure that was completely changed starting in 2024, I believe. So they started this routine all the way from the DSL, Dominican Summer League, all the way to AAA. Even the 16-year-olds in the Dominican Republic, they were implementing this new structure that all the coaches were teaching to everybody. This isn't an individual thing. You don't go by certain player talents. It's more of an instructional baseline. That's what they were working towards with the entire hitting base for the entire farm system. And it looked like it was a struggle. So last year, a lot of guys were struggling. Some of the K rates were going up. Some of the guys were hitting a lot more fly ball rates, but you weren't seeing enough of what they were looking for. And then all of a sudden, fast forward 2025, where we had multiple championship minor league affiliate teams. We had pretty much all of them in the playoffs, competing for the playoffs, not only led by the pitching, of course. We can talk about Tom McLean and Sproat all day. You saw some of the bats. Even guys like Jacob Reimer, guys like Yanni Enriquez, guys like Randy Guzman, players you weren't even talking about last year, they're implementing this. And I think some of the coaching staffs in the minor leagues are getting rewarded. And I know even talking to the Mets staff when I was like, oh, no, everything's getting blown up, I was being selfish about my guys in the minor leagues. And that source told me it's more major league than minors for the shakeup-wise. So this is a cool thing to see. And I think some of the stability in the minor leagues right now, coaching and player development wise, is because of what's been implemented even from last year to this year, showing itself positively. And again, these might be more Stearns guys, some of the stuff that's been implemented. even if guys got hired just before. But I think the structure, this is what he probably liked seeing. And guys like this now are the ones getting the promotion, so I love it.
Something that's interesting about Albert, Ernest, is that he was really responsible in a lot of ways for overseeing Carson Bench last year, his ascension, what he's become. He's now the number 2 prospect in the Mets system. What did you see specifically in the changes from Bench from a year ago to today? And I think we can attribute a lot of that to Jeff Albert.
And a lot of it is, again, Benj, I see him as one of the more toolsy guys because we've seen some of the other guys. I have my favorites. I have guys that I'm worried about, even guys like, Ryan Clifford, but with the swing and the K rates. But a guy like Benj, he was going opposite field even from when he got out of college, even in pro ball, St. Lucie, which is better to go opposite field, especially in Brooklyn. You can't hit it that way as a lefty anyway, pulling the ball. But some of the stuff you're seeing is he's kind of the guy using all the new analytics because I believe it was after the Parada draft. I think it was after 2022. They started getting additional amateur analytics and resources. Now you have a guys like this working with a guy like Benj, but they knew about him using the extra resources from the draft. So they knew about the exit velo. They knew about the hit tool, the barreling and plate discipline. He's like the prototype from what they wanted to start doing. And he was their first experience that's obviously working out really well. I think he's implementing the same things from his brief stay when he got turned pro ball in the summer. But again, now he's also going into the hitting lab, which there has been one for about a year or two. They just haven't been using it a lot with the minor league hitters. It was mostly the pitchers end of the year. You threw 15 to 20 pitches in the lab. Then you go home and you work on your stuff with what they see as a result. Now the hitting labs is going. And guys like this is going to be the new standard now, hopefully. Doesn't mean they're all going to be Carson Bench, but look what he did. But again, he has the plate discipline and approach to go with the exit velocity, barreling, slugging, and OPS crave that is the new age Mets now with the new age analytics.
Now, I got to get into it, Ernest. It's the offseason. The huggings got to stop. So here we go. We have a couple of trades that have kind of been floated out there, rumors. You see the people over on SNY talking about the yays or nays, Tariq Skubal, Peralta, whether or not they're going to go the free agent route. Meanwhile, obviously there's nobody of those guys' caliber on this staff, which I think that's what we need so desperately to add this year, that front-end starting pitcher. Now, Jim Duquette spoke about whether it's a Jonah Tung or a Brandon Sproat, or Carson Bench, or a Jet Williams, a Ryan Clifford potentially, depending on if the Mets even plan on retaining Pete Alonso, which we honestly don't know. We've been talking about it for weeks now. We all seem to think, the Mets have to bring him back. And I keep reiterating to my friends that, hey, we didn't want him last year. Not we, but David Stearns didn't want to give him a long-term contract last year. Another year into his 30s, I highly doubt he's going to. I think it's probably going to fall between 4 years, $110 million. Maybe a player opt out after year 2. I could see something like that. I don't see a ton of teams getting involved. Similar to last year, my biggest fear is this kind of drags out, and then you also have Morakami. We'll see what happens with that. But I need your honest opinion. You watch them every single day. If you could construct a trade to get one of these front-end starters, a Tariq Skubal, and I gave you the option, you're David Stearns, you are responsible for identifying the guys who you don't think are going to be great major league players. That's what all the great GMs do. Brian Cashman, we've seen for years, talk up every single Yankee prospect, and every team in MLB falls for it, and they always turn out to be nothing. That's just how it is. But that's what the great GMs do. So you're in the GM seat right now. You have to give up either Sproat or Tung or Benj or Williams. What do you where are you going there?
Well, now technically I have to stick to my guns. So I have an easy answer because I did this on one of my recent shows where I had to give up prospects and I was choosing some over the others. So yeah, when it came to the pitchers, McLean, Tung, Sproat, if I personally had to relieve myself of one of these pitchers, I went with trading Sproat before the other two. I had my thoughts. I had my ideas. I went with Sproat, who, by the way, I believe in a lot. I felt that the numbers at the earlier year, it's because of the development-wise of the two-seamer, the sinker, things that he was working on along with the command. So behind the scenes, I knew why he was struggling. I don't openly talk about struggles a lot. Obviously, you know my prospects. But still, as an end result, you have McLean, whose staff were telling me from 2 years ago to buy stock in Nolan McLean. With him meeting those expectations, it doesn't make him untouchable, but it probably makes him untouchable. So then you have Tong versus Sproat. Tong is younger. Obviously, I interviewed Jonah Tong, so there's my bias, but he's at least about 3 years younger. He put up one of the best minor league seasons of all time. Well, let's not exaggerate. I'll say even in the last 5 years with that ERA, ridiculous K rate, no hits allowed. For numbers like that, for a guy who is still learning all 4 pitches, in my mind, going with the younger player, trusting that he'll develop all 4 of his pitches, rather than the senior sign who's quickly adjusting really well. But that would have to be my choice. And again, obviously, that's me picking the least guy. There could be other teams that actually prefer a guy like Sproat, who's older, polished. The command is what it's going to be, but maybe some team feels they're going to have the answer for that. And you can't teach 98 to 100. So if that becomes more consistent for Sproat, he's a legit arm. But that would be my choice.
Let me ask you this on those 2 guys, because I get so nervous when it comes to a guy like Jonah Tong. We see this stuff. He needs to polish those secondary pitches, which we don't know if it's going to happen. Hopefully it does. But when his mechanics break down, which every pitcher deals with it eventually, where mechanics, they got to get it right. Remember what everyone compares him to Tim Lincecum. And Tim Lincecum's downfall was no one knew how to deal with his mechanics. They're bringing his father in, asking his dad how to deal with his mechanics, watching his rookie ball tape, trying to fix it. And that's what makes me nervous a little bit with Jonah Tong. If his mechanics get a little out of whack, that's straight over the top. He's barely looking at the plate. He's scraping the ground. He's got no follow through. He's got a half follow through. We've seen it all year last year. And I feel like Brandon Sproat has a more repeat delivery. Yes, Tong hides the ball more, but Tong's also not one thing we heard all last year, well, Jonah Tong's throwing 97. He's throwing 98. We rarely saw that at the major league level. He seemed to sit 93, 94, where I personally have seen Sproat touch triple digits. Yeah. And he sits up in the upper 90s. His stuff comes off more electric to me. He's the guy where I say, okay, if he refines that slider a little more, if he develops that third pitch, you could be looking at a crazy, wicked number 2 behind Nolan McLean for years to come. I'm not sold on Jonah Tong. I think he's a great story. I think he came out of nowhere. I think it's fair to say that. He came out of nowhere this last year, and maybe because he's so young, he can pick up another mile or 2 on his fastball. But I know a lot of people say he's got the most raw stuff, and I think it's fair enough to say, but I'm not sold on the upside of him being in the Tariq Skubal ilk, the Nolan McLean ilk. I need to see it before I believe it. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll also be honest with my bias. Even watching the SNY broadcast, I believe even Garrett brought it up during one of the stuff, and it kind of makes sense because I've seen games where Jonah Tong, I remember there was a game this year, he walked 3 batters in an inning, and it was a scoreless inning because he had 3 walks and 3 Ks. Nobody scored. He was facing AA hitters. So yeah, when you fall behind at any level, things can snowball. When you're a guy like Jonah Tong, you get out of it with strikeouts. But again, that's AA. And then a really small sample size of AAA. So now we're getting into, repeating delivery at the major league level, throwing finally 100 pitches. 100 even sounds like a lot these days. But a lot of people, when hey, Dove, how far can McLean go now that he's dominating? I'm like, well, all of minor league baseball, at least the Mets, because I'm Mets-centric, they're all throwing 80-ish to 90-ish pitches no matter who they are, whether it's McLean, Sproat, the future Dwight Goodens of the Mets organization. They're not going beyond 90-something pitches this year at A-ball, AA, AAA. It's the structure they have in place. Now you have a guy like Jonah Tong. What do? Is he going to throw 200 innings? He's going to average 95 to 100 pitches a start with that delivery, with command. Now, again, when I asked Jonah Tong himself, and he says, I know I got to work on my command, and he's working on the slider, and he's an extremely hard worker. All the tools are there. But again, is he going to be another Lynchcomb? I don't know. Lynchcomb was more even injury-wise, too. So it doesn't have to necessarily translate to the delivery itself. But one thing I'm strongly against, I don't want anybody to think that we're going to pigeonhole Jonah Tong into a future closer or pen role. Everyone wants to go that route with certain guys based on what they feel is the number of pitches they possess. I still see him as a future 4-pitch arsenal guy. So it's just a matter of the command either way. With the delivery, everything else, he's going to have to throw enough strikes. He's going to have to trust his fastball, which, by the way, in 2024 was sitting 93, 94. 2025, he was back to 95, 97 this year. And then again, we're seeing him rushed at the end of the year, blowed past his innings for his season. He's already passed 100 innings when he got here, which 100 plus is a lot in the minor leagues. It's not always about a 200 barometer in the major leagues. I'm using an excuse now that maybe he's getting worn down, but no excuse for the command. He's going to have to work it. And again, no matter who he is, he's not DeGrom. I'll be honest. He can't throw 2 pitches and make it in Major League Baseball. He's going to have to throw the changeup, the Vulcan changeup, the slider, and his famous curveball. He's got to use all of them more consistently.
Now, remember we saw also earlier in the season, a lot of Mets fans were trying to pigeonhole Brandon Sproat into the bullpen. It looks like the Mets are going to give him his fair share. I don't know why everyone's so amped to do that. I think maybe Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean's success kind of did that in fans' perspective, because they're like, well, McLean's got a 1 ERA. Tong's got a 1 ERA. Brandon Sproat, what's up with this? He's got a 3.5 ERA, not realizing that's prototypical for most pitchers coming through the minor leagues. And I always challenge Mets fans, go back and look at Noah Syndergaard before he came to the minor leagues. His ERA was 4.5. Not a lot of people talk about that. Now, I want to get to my last point, and we'll get back to Dan. When you're talking about Carson Bench and Jet Williams, I think we got to address both of them at once, because I think there's a chance, if they're not traded, one of them's not traded, they could both potentially make this roster going into next season or be up very early on. Because I think the overall consensus, and obviously it's got to happen, but consensus around a lot of people that I'm talking to, there's a very high chance, and Joe DeMaio put it out on the show, very high chance that Mark Vientos is moved this offseason. And there's a high chance that Jeff McNeil's going to get moved as well, because Jeff McNeil's got value and he's got that contract. And the Mets have so much on the other side that they have to add, whether it goes to bullpen arms, whether it's the rotation, frontline starter. So I could see them coming out. I don't see Acuna as a major league player. I just don't. And a lot of people argue with me about that. But when you talk about Jet Williams and Carson Bench, there's a world, Ernest, where if they light it up in spring training, could we see them in center field and second base, respectively, sometime in early May, let's just say?
Yeah, obviously, as the prospect hugger, in my perfect world, they're both with the Mets organization in 2026. And yeah, if it was up to me, center field position needs to go to Carson Bench. If it's between the two of them, respectfully, there's no choice. It's an easy decision. You go with Bench defensively. You go with his defense overall at all 3 outfield positions. He also has a much stronger arm, Carson Bench. That would be the easy choice in center field. Jet Williams, he seems to still quietly been meeting a lot of expectations, even in the Mets organization, and you see it around. The on-base percentage could be a natural thing for him. He's going to use certain tools to his advantage. I do see him as a better hit tool than a Luis Angel Acuna. So if you were able to say who could be the future second baseman from within, it's definitely Jet over Acuna. But again, it's also Bench over Jet as far as center field. And I've been honest, since the end of the year, I started ranking Carson Bench ahead of Jet Williams, too, at the end of the year. So those are some of my biases based on my decision-making on who I had in the kind of the pecking order, one way or another, prospect-wise and even fielding-wise.
I mean, we talked about second. We talked about the future center field. Before I circle back to the starting pitching and some of the bullpen pieces, Ernest, I want to get your opinion on this. For the fans at home who maybe haven't seen enough of Ryan Clifford We know he's a very good hitter. He matched, I believe, 29 home runs this year in total. The bat is there, but with the whole Pete Alonso thing hanging over the Mets' head, if he comes back, say Pete's back and you have Clifford, how is he defensively? Is he good out there to be able to play in right field a couple days? Is he good enough defensively at this point to trust him to play some games at first base? Or do you still think there's some development defensively with Ryan Clifford?
I mean, that's the other thing now. We got to start talking about how do guys project? Everybody likes comps. What's the comp? What's the comp? I'm like, dude, I don't know. Adam Dunn. Like, just come rate some power guys that are, if you want to come up with stuff. But defensively, to make it a Mets-centric comps, I've been honest about this, even online. Ryan Clifford, defensively with a glove, I would see him more as a Vientos than a Lindor. I'll put it that way. More of a Vientos than a Beatty defensively, because Beatty's made a lot of strides. So this is where I see it. If you're going to put him in a corner outfield, if he's going to be mashing to the point of, dude, we just need him no matter what, then you go the Schwarber route with Ryan Clifford. That would be the ceiling, in my opinion. If he's going to go left field, right field, it's to be Schwarber and understanding what you got. So that's going to be a lot of pressure possibly on Carson Bench, among other things, but as a future center fielder. But that would be the option. Now, first base, it's hard to really say to have enough information. I will put him on an Alonso level, first baseman-wise, defensively with a glove. That could probably get people annoyed as well, but that's the route that I'm going. I'm not going with a Gold Glove caliber first baseman either. Because sometimes if you play both, it's like, well, which one does he play better? I would still think the more natural position is going to be first base. And I can't just say DH, like with Vientos. Put him at DH. He's like 25. Yeah, 15 years at DH. It's not realistic. Ever since the DH has been put in place in the National League, I really don't see any teams. Is there one out there that has a legit 500 at-bat DH completely outside of the Dodgers for obvious reasons? I really don't see it. So you got to have more defensive positionings. If the Mets re-sign Pete Alonso, that's probably the same month or week that Ryan Clifford's probably traded, in my opinion.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Circling back to the pitchers real quick, I'll do one on the rotation and then one with some of these prospects in the bullpen. So with the rotation on a big league level, I think we all agree, Tong needs some work. Probably is going to start in AAA to begin next year. You have basically 6 guys coming back, really 8 if we're being honest. You have Manaea, Clay Holmes, David Peterson, Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, Kodai Senga. That's 6 right there. That's not even mentioning Christian Scott. That's not mentioning, of course, Jonah Tong. And that's not making any trades. That's your 1 through 6, 1 through 7. You're pretty deep in the rotation right now if you're the New York Mets. Who do you see potentially being out of the picture, more so in a bullpen role, if anybody? I know Manaea is making a lot of money, but could he go to the bullpen? David Peterson, Clay Holmes. How do you see this rotation shaping up if the Mets want to bring in more talent like we all presume they will?
I mean, even for, new school, old school, the old Terry Collins jokes about taking the veterans over the younger guys at any all costs, it could be easy for me to say, like, yeah, if no matter who they sign this winter, even if certain guys just literally go lights out, like 15 scoreless innings, I can still see both Jonah Tong and even Brandon Sproat breaking camp back in AAA, even if they dominated spring training, which will also annoy people when you talk about spring training stats.
Oh, yeah.
But now here's the good. What's the good and the bad right now? I was very happy with the rotation. I didn't know what was going to become of Holmes. Clay Holmes had an amazing season. He probably wore out. We just weren't going to know what to do with Manaea and Senga. Again, I don't care, a full, wonderful offseason where they're just sunbathing, getting massages, and not even doing anything. Can we trust them to pitch 175-plus innings next year? Because that's going to be we're going to be doing this all over again next season. By next summer, we'll be wanting a bunch of deadline stars. Everyone's going to be asking me, who do we call up because they're hurt again? We're in the same situation. I believe in Clay Holmes. I think Clay Holmes can be a starter. He's proven it. He's a physical horse, and he showed what he can do. He might as well definitely be in the rotation. If there's odd men out, I'm going to go with the younger guys for now. But when it comes to like a Manaea who can be in the pen, Can he pitch at all? What can we prove even in spring that's going to show that Manaea is quote unquote back to normal as far as how he was in the 2024 Mets uniform, right? If we can see something, and then Senga is just, I don't know. Maybe it's time for a trade, possibly not to just get rid of a guy because I love him. Maybe he just needs a totally different organization to do his thing. I don't know if the New York market is going to work for Kodai Senga. I hope it does. They have the gimmicks. They have the ghost sport going on. Everything works in his favor other than whatever's going on, which is not working.
Then quickly on the bullpen for me. We saw, Dylan Ross got the call up at the end of the year. I know you were on that. We were on that. We were just waiting. Guys like Ryan Lambert come to mind moving forward. We saw Jonathan Pintaro wasn't great, had a 27 ERA when he was up here. Who do you see being in the picture in terms of young guys, prospects that we might not hear about all the time? Because let's be honest, the Mets basically have to remake a bullpen going into next year. Depending on Edwin Diaz, Ryan Helsley's gone. We'll see what happens with him. AJ Minter, the player option. Brooks Raley, the option. You have Reed Garrett's on the shelf. And you also have Drew Smith and Albert Alzolay, but that's not a full bullpen. So who do you see some of these guys who could potentially make some noise early on in the year from a prospect perspective to help out this Mets bullpen?
I mean, you name the two main guys, Dylan Ross, and again, he has, here we go again, command issues. But then again, you have a guy who's jumping 3-4 levels in one season who also missed a lot of time since turning pro. Again, if you go on the MILB page for a guy like Dylan Ross, he was drafted not when you think. He was drafted a couple of years back. You just wouldn't know it because he seems so new and he's already at AAA. He's missed a lot of time. So that's why I still wanted him to pitch at the end of the year, but he's still a legit back end pen arm at his finest with his splitter. But again, when you can throw 98 to 100, that helps. Same for Ryan Lambert. He might almost be the more polished of sorts guys over Dylan Ross. But again, he has the health going for him before. Dylan Ross has missed a lot of time. Ryan Lambert went really fast, really quickly in the system as well from the draft. Those are the two main guys. After that, we're talking about wild card arms, which we always are. Mm-hmm. I have a guy, I saw some posts this week that he's going to be in winter ball. Saul Garcia is one of the most dominant pitchers that nobody talks about in the Mets minor league system. But if you see the stats and the walk rate, you'll know why everyone's stressed out. I mean, that's the thing. I've been saying it for years. Saul Garcia looks like a Jerry's Familia to me. He could at least be a Daniel Nunez to me. He's got to figure out the command. His slider, the coaches tell me, may be the best slider in the Mets organization. So, in the minor leagues. Can he put enough command? Even Familia had command issues, and everybody stressed over it. Don't make Saul Garcia the closer then, but he has that potential. There's other guys that just went up and down, like the Dom Hamels. They struggled trying to transition him to the pen. Felipe de la Cruz, he's a lefty pitcher that throws 95 plus, which is always a positive. His when he got to AAA, the command wasn't there. He was getting hit around. So that experiment transferring him to the pen didn't work. Now, I don't know what's going on with the transitions between starter to pen, player development for the Mets. They have a lot to work on because I can only truly think of the two main guys, with Garcia being the absolute wild card.
So, Ernest, my last one for you. I want to get to a quick question from one of our members here, Brad, who is talking about, and I agree with Brad. Brad says Scuba could be our Johan Santana of this generation. But Brad says, why did Vientos go away from right field, his right field power? I know you're more of a minor league guy, but it's something that all of us wondered. It kind of just disappeared this year, and I think it really cost him.
I mean, can I start getting mad at analytics or coaches or just blame people for something? Because I've been worried about this for years. I was worried about my old Dom Smith. Dom Smith was hitting ground balls between short and third in the minor leagues. Why is he trying to hit a bunch of bombs for 500 yards, pulling the ball, and then all of a sudden he was a 200 hitter in the major leagues? Stop doing that. We even saw that this season. I don't know who to blame, but I remember when Francisco Alvarez was going oppo a lot and he was dominating. Then all of a sudden he hit nothing, swinging off of his shoes, can't hit anything trying to pull the ball, and he's back in the minor leagues. Same with Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos needs to be a right center guy. Again, he's nowhere near David Wright, but you got to do the thing. You got to be what you naturally are. Vientos doesn't even have the overall bat speed anyway to pull the ball too much. Let him use his talent and his strengths. I don't know if it's analytics, coaching, the barreling, exit velo stuff is usually there anyway, a lot for Vientos, but who's telling them to pull the ball so much? Now I'm going to be shaking my fist at the clouds like an old man because I respect analytics and I'm fine with all of this. I don't see him as a pull guy. So who's teaching him that? That's what I want to know.
Well, Ernest, let me ask you this. We saw the shots Chavez was taking with the two hitting coach approach and everything, and one guy saying one thing, another telling the other thing, and he kind of took some shots on his way out. You think that could have played a role?
I mean, that could, and I know even last year, I know at least one hitting coach who's no longer with the organization, and that coach wasn't happy with some of the instructional changes to the hitters in the minor leagues, going for that slugging, OPS, exit velo, barrel. He wasn't really super on board with it completely. He felt that a lot of more guys should be more individualized in their player development, which I can't really argue against, but that might be some of the stuff that was going on even internally, trying to put together a generalized structure for the pitchers and the hitters, and some of the backlash, possibly not backlash, too strong of a word, some of the coaches and staff trying to implement it, it just wasn't working. It wasn't clicking. Now, if I had to guess, because that's the information I do truly have that I haven't really reported ever, by the way, online, maybe some of that stuff was going on at the major league level with some of the implementation being more generalized, and maybe there was pushback either from players, staff, or both.
Now, my last one, what to expect from Christian Scott this year?
You know what? To make it really dumbed down for me, I'm going to compare him to 2026. I'm going to think of Christian Scott as the pitching version of Ronnie Mauricio. He's going to have to just come back from a year-long injury and just be in the minor leagues and see how it goes. Now, obviously, for Ronnie Mauricio, he kind of got pushed up a little too soon, possibly, and then they couldn't send him down, I heard. I think it's one of those things where he kept his option by them refusing to send him down where he belonged rather than sit on the bench. I think Christian Scott in 2026, his only job is to eat innings. But I also don't even consider him a prospect anymore. That's why I'm comparing him to Ronnie Mauricio. Where do you rank Mauricio? I no longer cared coming into this year because
he's way out of the 30 range.
He's like a quasi major leaguer in my opinion, and I already feel that way about Christian Scott. Now, 2026 Christian Scott, if he's healthy, I would rather put Christian Scott in the major league bullpen this next season if he's legit needed. That would be the spot. I don't know about putting him in a rotation coming off the year-long missing. Now we're going to run into a Ronnie Mauricio thing with the missing reps. That might be the best fit for him if we get to see him back in 2026.
Last one for me, Ernest, and we appreciate the time as always.
Absolutely.
We have a bench coach, Kai Correa. We have Jeff Albert as well being the hitting coach. There's supposed to be another one coming up the pike. We'll see who that is. Pitching coach, you're a pitching guy. Do you have a name in mind? The early reports indicate that likely the Mets are going to go outside the organization, but that is not confirmed. AJ Sager comes to mind for me. I know you know him as well. Any names that you're throwing in the ring for the Mets pitching coach? And don't say yourself because that's the obvious one.
No, I get most of my information from other people. I can't do anything myself. But, I mean, hey, I like when things become internally promotions. Yeager's one of those guys that a lot of pitchers have talked about. And there's like these combo guys that were in low A, high A, and then they were the pitching coaches for high A, double A. So they've received promotions so far. You have Jordan Krause and you have Dan McKinney, two extremely well-liked, well-respected coaches. Every player I talk to behind the scenes, he's my guy, they're my guy. They literally care about me. So they go the whole made-for-TV stuff, like these guys behind the scenes, they care. But again, along with the care, they're very analytically driven. they implement this information that Stearns is giving, and that's possibly one of the many reasons they got promoted each in 2025. They both got promoted, moving up levels. I don't know how much higher you can go with McKinney and Jordan Krause, but those are two names that I can see for a long time. And I believe on the hitting side, there's a young assistant hitting coach named Jonathan Jones. Heard really good things about him. He could be one of those future lifer type of guys who can build in the organization for some years to come. But I don't know who can get jumped all the way to the major leagues. They may have to wait their turn still. I'll see, hopefully, if they're back with the Mets, where they get placed.
All right, Ernest, thanks so much. Guys, stick around because Dan and I are about to get into some bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. We're going to be talking Murakami, the trades that we have out there that are swirling around the internet, whether or not they're realistic or not. But so stick around. Ernest, thanks so much for giving us some of your time. I look forward to having you back as we get closer to spring training. Who knows? Maybe the winter meetings, because we might have to talk about some of the people you love so much getting their ass out the door.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll show those teary videos. I'll make some on my channel. I'll come on your. I'll have enough room to cry on both channels. Don't worry, guys.
There we go.
Ernest, thanks so much.
Thank you, Ernest.
Yep.
All right, guys. Ernest Dove, thanks so much, Ernest. Some great stuff there. A lot in the prospects. Interesting take on Christian Scott, I must say. A guy who was widely regarded as this organization's number one starter, number one prospect, Dan, in the pitching market for what, a year and a half? Now potentially being designated to a bullpen role. I kind of disagree with that. I think the Mets are going to hold him down in the minors, use him as depth, something that we spoke about earlier today that I posted, that I actually think this has the chance to be the New York Mets rotation heading into next season. And look, one thing that we know Stearns loves nothing more than a short-term contract. Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Griffin Canning. You have Tyler McGill on one, David Peterson on 1-year contract, trading for Halsey on a 1-year contract, Castillo 1-year contract, Rogers a 1-year contract, not extending Diaz from his 1-year contract with the opt-out this year. Pete Alonso on a short-term deal. David Stearns loves nothing more than a short-term contract, and that's why here is my rotation heading into next season. Probably plus, give or take, one veteran potentially fighting out. At starting pitching, number one is going to be Michael King, Nolan McLean, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Brandon Sproat, and I believe Jonathan Santucci, Wettinger, and other veterans will be added, but at the AAA level, and that includes a guy like Christian Scott. Do I see the Mets going out and acquiring a potential big-time starter? Something I would love to push for, but Michael King, in my opinion, is that prototypical guy. He's going to have a lot of suitors, but I don't think a lot of people are going to be going crazy long-term with him. I think Dylan Cease actually might get longer-term considering the amount of games that he pitches. Same with Ranger Suarez. So maybe you get a Michael King for that 4 years, $100 million range, Dan, where he would slide right in right there. But what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get to some bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. And guys, if you have comments, make sure you put them in the chat right now. Obviously, if you are a member, we're going to prioritize your comments, your questions over everybody else, as we did during that segment with our guy right there. So, Dan, what do you think about that? And we'll get to some bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie.
Yeah, Michael King's interesting, right? Spotrac has his appraisal at 4 years, $91 million. So you're a little bit
so I'm in the ballpark.
Right on the money. You're sliding into second base. You're about to steal second. You're right in the ballpark for Michael King. I like his stuff. It moves a lot, similar to Nolan McLean. Is he enough to be an ace of a staff? That's where I get a little shaky, because I think if you can have McLean and a guy like King kind of battling each other out to begin the year, pushing each other in a way, like who's going to be the number two, who's going to be the number three. Based on performance, one's going to go above the other unless they pitch to the exact same stats, which no one expects. It's not possible. That's what I'm looking at. I mean, I like it. You know, King is coming off a good year, 15 starts, a little bit nicked with injury, 5-3 record, a 3.44 ERA, strikeout to walk of 2.9. So I like what he brings to the table. I really do. And he's confident, and he's pitched in New York, which I can't stress enough. I think that's very important. Is he an ace though? That's where I fall a little short. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm right there with you. I threw out a hypothetical this morning, just kind of, testing the waters a little bit. Threw it up on Instagram exclusively, but you have to tweet it out to get it up on Instagram. I put Sandy as the number one. As you guys know, these are very fluid. We'll probably have 100 of these out throughout the offseason to keep you guys getting you ready till opening day. Sandy number one, dignified ace, right? Above a McLean for sure. Then you have McLean 2, a Dylan Cease 3, but that could be a Michael King as well. And then Holmes, Mania, Sproat. It was interesting to hear Ernest say he could see, along with Tong, which we all expect to be in AAA, he could see potentially Brandon Sproat being in AAA to begin next year, which is a little interesting, opens up the door for Senga.
I'd be surprised.
So, yeah, I'd be surprised as well, but I don't hate it. So I like the Michael King pick. I do. And 4 for 100 is probably what he'll most likely get if there's a bidding war between a couple teams.
Well, and notice I left Senga out of that. And I know a lot of people in the chat are saying, Ray, well, Michael King has been injury prone. 2022, he had 34 starts. Pitched in 49 games, I guess, obviously, in 2023. This last year, 31 starts. So that's 3 years. And then 22 starts in 2021. We're not talking about Sean Mania-ish. We're not talking about Frankie Montas when it comes to injuries, but I get that. But with that said, we're going to get to our bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. Dan, we're going to lead it off right off the bat with maybe an erroneous one before we get to the real ones. Bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. The New York Mets are more likely to acquire a Jose Ramirez over a Byron Buxton.
Wow. I'm going to say bold-faced lie. I don't think they're really in the market for either of them, if you want the honest truth. I know some people want to float the Jose Ramirez stuff. Byron Buxton makes a lot of sense. The Mets need a center fielder. I just, with the crowdedness of third base specifically, we have 3 third basemen. Unless they trade all 3 this offseason, they're not going to do. I just don't see that being, you're just going to uproot what Beatty's done developmentally. Even Vientos to an extent, what he's done developmentally. I know he isn't as far ahead as Beatty at this point. And Mauricio, coming off an injury, I feel like they do want to see him next year to an extent. Because when he played, let's be honest, I'm the highest on Mauricio out of all 3 of them. So I'm still holding out hope that they'll give it another year. I think Vientos probably out of the picture, and they just let Beatty and Mauricio battle it out. But I'd say bold-faced lie, because, again, I don't think they're going after a Buxton either, as much as that would be the guy to go get. Julio Rodriguez is under contract. So, a bold-faced lie, right?
I actually think there is a solid chance. I don't want to say complete chance, but solid chance if Steve Cohen presses the button, presses, especially if the New York Mets say we just signed a Dylan Cease and are riding with that, you can't sell it to fans. And I am fairly sure the Mets were entertaining Buxton before he said he didn't want to go anywhere this past season. I think he is their dream center fielder. An outfield of him, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo. You want to talk about a win now move, as Buxton, I believe, is 32 right now. But maybe it wouldn't cost you as much considering the age. And I believe he's only making like $15 million a year. I would prefer Jose Ramirez because I know a lot of people, including yourself, which I disagree with, which is fine. Everyone says the Mets have 3 third basemen. They have 1. Mark Vientos, the Mets showed you at the end of the season last year, is not a third baseman. And Ronnie Mauricio, until he's not hitting 100, is not a major league third baseman. I actually think, hot take, I think there's a really high chance he's not in this organization after 2026. Because we didn't see any progress from him last year. And this is 2 years removed from that knee injury with a sub 20 percentile run speed, sprint speed. His bat speed's there, but can't hit lefties for his life. I think it's going to be Brett Beatty's. I think it's going to be Brett Beatty's unless they make another big acquisition. That's how I look at that.
It's fair.
Dan, bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. The New York Mets will indeed retain Pete Alonso long-term.
It's a bold-faced truth. There is no scenario where the Mets are a better team unless you're just going to divvy up that $150 million elsewhere, and you're not going to be able to get the caliber of a player of Pete Alonso at that point, even if it's 2 or 3 players at that point. Pete Alonso is a New York Met. He has been since he's been a rookie and ever got into the league in 2019. And I think he finishes his career as a New York Met. You have to get it done. You're going to have to spend money. But at this point, every negotiation starts on the high end. Whether it's with cars, whether it's with shoes, whatever you want to be trading and dealing with. Pawn Stars, one of my favorite shows. They always try to get the top dollar first. And then the other guy comes in with his offer and they meet somewhere in the middle. That's how negotiations work, 101. So I think that's what you're looking at. It's a scare tactic by Boris. 7 years. Let's be honest. Like Evan talked about this on the Rico last night or 2 nights ago, whenever it was. The Yankees overextended to go get Max Fried. I get they're not the same player, but sometimes it's the principle of a deal. You have to give something to get something. And those back end of that Fried contract, probably not going to be great. We all understand that. The same way with Juan Soto. And I think the same thing with Pete to an extent. But the way he's built, the way I feel he's going to mash at least 35 home runs till the age of 38 years old, you have to do whatever you can to bring him back. And it's going to be a negotiation for sure. But yes, bold-faced truth. Pete Alonso will be with the Mets, probably not for a 7-year deal. They'll probably have to sign an extension at some point. But yes, a 4 or 5-year deal.
I say bold-faced lie. I think Pete is as good as gone. And that's why it takes me to my next bold-faced truth, bold-faced lie. Will the New York Mets acquire Morakami? I say bold-faced truth. And I think he's Pete's replacement. 25 years old. There's a reason why David Stearns loves the foreign players. He just does, especially the ones that come from East Asia. I believe that's where Japan is. But let's be real. He flew there. He's watched him. You watched him hit the walk-off there. When you're looking at his stats there this year, pretty damn good. I have his stats pulled up here. So for this season, now we're talking 56, 66, about 79 games so far. 79 games, 24 homers. He's got a 286 batting average, or 69 games. 286 batting average, so the batting average is up. OPS over 1,000. And the big part, what does David Stearns always love? He loves the youngins. 25 years old. You want to talk about getting into another market? You want to talk about another revenue stream? He's the biggest thing coming out maybe since Ohtani. I mean, yeah, we heard about Yamamoto, but, you know, he didn't have the hype. You heard about Sasaki. He stunk early this year. Not a crazy amount of hype. But in the New York market, that's why that I could see them holding on to Kodai Senga to try to help recruit. Say, hey, New York's actually a good place. Let me show you. Things like that happen. So I actually think Morakami will end up being our first baseman next year, which would then allow the Mets to trade a guy like Ryan Clifford, who grades out amongst, as a terrible defensive first baseman. It's what it is. But that would be a David Stearns type move for me. Pete walks, which I don't want him to. Let me explain to you guys. I don't want Pete to walk. But you're looking right now. You're saying if David Stearns, who regardless or not, we have to trust him. He's been right. One thing he knows, Dan, are prospects. Look at this system. First draft pick, Carson Bench, right to the top. After having Jet Williams here, Ilian Pena, right into the top 10. Mitch Voigt, right into the top 10, Dan. That doesn't happen with that early. One thing David Stearns knows is prospect. And if he thinks Murakami's the big deal, and Pete Alonso, let's just say, is stuck on 6 years, which I'll take for you. Joe DeMaio, right here on this show last week, go look, said after 4 years, he'd be getting very nervous to give anything more than 4 years to Pete Alonso. You're telling me maybe if Baltimore doesn't come calling, maybe the A's who are moving, Seattle. You know who had an article out today on Pete Alonso? Our former friend of the show, great guy, used to work for Newsday, Tim Healy, was talking about how the Red Sox may entertain going after Alonso. And if that market heats up, which it didn't all of last season, and dare I say, the Red Sox say, we were right there this year. We need one pitcher, one bat, and let's go to war. It might be a Michael King, Pete Alonso tandem. They're one pitcher away from being really legit. And I could see a team overpaying Alonso. I mean, and that's just me. I'm trying to come at it from a David Stearns perspective. Him saying, you know what? I have Soto, who's 27, Morakami, who will be 26. I'll have Brett Beatty, who's 25. I have a young core here. And then if Carson Bench does work out, which everybody thinks he's going to be a star, including myself at 22, I have 4 guys in their mid-20s, plus Alvarez, if he could stay healthy. We saw the signs there. So I have 5 potential starters in their mid to early 20s that I can move forward with. Maybe you get Murakami for, dare I say, I don't know, 6 years at $20 million a season, and Pete's going to want 6 for 30. I mean, I saw some crazy contracts thrown out there, Dan. I saw contracts, 6 for 210. Crazy. And these are from SNY, like reputable places. I don't see David Stearns saying, you know what? I was willing to give you 3 last year. Now I'm going to give you 6. I just don't see it, bro. But give me your opinion, and then we'll get to some of your guys' comments.
Yeah, a lot there if I want to unpack. First thing with the SNY stuff, you're 100%. I think Sal Licata actually had one of the better deals, 5 for 150. Pretty standard. Clean your hands of it, move on, give him his 30, and you can settle. I think it was Anthony McCarron who appraised him at 37 AAV.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. He is not getting anywhere.
I'm going to get him on the show.
You're out of your mind. Put the pipe down. But we respect Anthony. We really do. At the same time, yeah. And then with the Murakami stuff, I'm going to say it's a bold-faced lie. And there's a couple of reasons, right? You know, you read up on this guy. He can't really hit high velocity. Anything 95, he's going to have a tough time because he's not seeing that back home. I mean, it's a lot different here. And I think that's something. You have to be able to play in New York. I say this all the time. Pete Alonso has proven that. Murakami could come here and start mashing and then fall off a cliff because he can't handle the pressure or just can't handle being here. And that really is something I look at. You know, looking at the Mariners, right? They're up 2-0 on the Blue Jays. Most likely they're going to the World Series. Hopefully they win their first World Series. That would be great for Seattle. Someone on Seattle I would like to be a replacement for Pete, but you never know, is Josh Naylor. I think he's a guy that you can definitely bring in here, and he makes a difference. It would be a really tough sell to sit here and say, oh, you know, we let Pete walk. He went to the Red Sox for 6 years. I just don't see that happening because, A, I think the Mets will be in that 4 to 5 year ballpark, and then the money's going to be pretty close. If it's on Pete to leave $20 million on the table and he goes and walks out the door, then Pete never wanted to be a Met, and we can all sleep soundly knowing that. Right now, I just don't really know. I think he's going to take less money to be a Met, even if it was comparable prices. I do. If it's not comparable, don't get me wrong. We're not stupid. Everybody wants a big payday to take care of their family. That's what comes first. But I just have a hard time letting my best instincts say that Steve Cohen is not going to do what he did last year and fly down, speak to him, do whatever he can, talk to Stearns, get money where it needs to be to bring Pete Alonso back. There is a lot of positives to bring him here. I know Stearns doesn't think about the fans when he's doing these negotiations, but you look out into the ballpark, most people are wearing Pete jerseys, Lindor, Nimmo. He loves New York, the charities, the Tunnel for Towers, the pancake triple plays. Like, these are all things that I think make Pete, and he's not a bad player. Like, this is the most frustrating thing. Why don't we want Pete back? He is a very good player. That's what always blows my mind. Is he a -9 fielding run value? Absolutely. But that's not why you have
can't
him.
pay a DH 30+ million a year. If that's what we don't know right now, Dan, but you got to look in the head of David Stearns. What did we talk about the entire offseason so far? I heard the word run prevention more than anything else in my life the last 2 months since he had that press conference a month ago, whatever. But if I'm hearing that, that screams we are not going after Pete. I could see the Mets putting a contract offer out there to try to appease fans, and that's what gets me to I see somebody brought up my take that I had yesterday. I believe it was Renee. Hey, Renee, hope all is well with you. Right, if Pete does not return and the Mets sign Morakami and McNeil is traded, Beatty to second, can they go after Bregman? That is actually something we brought up similar with Joe DeMayo here, and he said absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but if you're telling me this offseason we walk away with Murakami because he's making, I don't know, $12 million less, which allows you to sign Bregman and still bring in a Michael King. You bring in those 3 guys, and all it does is cost you money, and you still have this top-flight farm system to make moves. It's something you got to really consider, Danny. We got to try to take our goggles off. And look, I want Pete back. I keep saying that. But I am not giving him a 6-year contract. Him and Nimmo will be fighting each other, making 50 to 60 million bucks between them for the last 2 years of their contract playing DH. I just don't see the Mets paying 2 guys to DH $55 to $60 million the last 2 years of their contract. I just don't see it. And I look at a guy like what you said, Josh Naylor, the guy. The last few years, he's been hitting right around 300, 17 to 20 home runs. I would rather, if he's willing to just DH and pay him a little extra, I'd rather Murakami, Josh Naylor, Alex Bregman, and Michael King. You might get them all for just the money that's coming off the books. Pete Alonso's 30. You have Stanek. You have Diaz is 20, who you got to re-up Diaz, so you can't really count that. But you look at Starling Marte and Pete Alonso. Right there is $51.5 million between the two of them. And you have other guys coming off as well. Cedric Mullins, the rest of his contract's going to be coming off. You have, we went up and down everything. You have a lot of guys coming off. You're getting injury settlement money from Frankie Montas, probably $12 million. So now you're up to $64 million. There's a lot of money, especially. There's no excuse. If you're filling out the back end of this rotation with young guys, which they appear to be, or guys who are not making a ton of money, that might be the deal. I mean, you go to your deal that you presented yesterday, I had pulled up for Tariq Skubal. I mean, you're talking David Peterson, Jonah Tong, Jet Williams. You threw Brett Beatty in there, which I don't know if I would do that. Maybe somebody else of lesser, but you did. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Might be. Him, and then you had, who was the other guy you had in there?
Clifford.
Ryan Clifford. I'm not saying you're wrong, Dan. That might be it. But what we can't, my biggest fear, and I've said it a ton. Mets bring back Diaz. They bring back Alonso. They go out and sign Dylan Cease, and we're going to try to piecemeal a bullpen and say, let it ride. And Tyron Taylor's going to be starting in center field. We're going to be right back to where we were last year. We have to learn. The second half of last year, what happened was catastrophic for this organization. No other word could describe it. You were 21 games over 500 at the end of the year. You're 4 games over. Unacceptable. I think Carlos Mendoza should have been fired along with everybody else. And that's what, look, your colleague Mike Puma put it out there. There's going to be pressure to, if we go to a slow start to fire Mendoza. I think this is a recipe for disaster unless major changes are made. Let's get to your final comments, Dan, and then we'll get ready to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that Evan point, right? Like where he talks about, the Max Fried deal and the end of those years you can live with because you want the good years of the player. And let's be honest, payroll is year to year. Like you lower the CBT by getting these guys in on these longer term deals. That's number one. Like people think, oh, I'm just paying him and it all adds up to this big pile of money. No, it's every single year you can figure it out. And I think the Mets have that pretty well documented. I mean, they have 2 big contracts with Lindor and Soto. Diaz, you could call that a big contract if he gets 4 for $80. I mean, it's $20 million a year.
But you're replacing what he's already making.
Yeah, but to me, Ray, I don't see Pete Alonso breaking down in the same way that people think he's just going to fall off a cliff by the time he hits 35. The reason you don't sign him to a 6-year deal is because you say, okay, by age 36, he's going to be what you said. He's just going to be someone who I can't really play. And he's fighting for a spot with Brandon Nimmo for DH reps. I'm fine with that. Like, I see that being where the Mets are going by 2032 or 33. Again, a left-handed DH platoon with a righty of Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo. That is what the ideal should be. So again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. What is a bad year for Pete Alonso? He hits 34 home runs last year. That's a Hall of Famer waiting to happen. And maybe I'm really high on Pete. Maybe I think he's going to mash 500 and I'm delusional and all this stuff, but I really don't think it is. I really don't think it is. And you don't want to see that happen on another team. And again, Pete should be back with the New York Mets, and it would be a big mistake if they let him go. If Pete wants to be somewhere else, God bless him. But he had that opportunity last year. It was minimal suitors. There's going to be a couple more this year. Let's be honest. There's probably going to be 5 teams versus the 2 we saw last year. It's not going to be like 10 teams are in on Pete Alonso upping his price. It's going to be the bottom line. And no matter what, Steve Cohen can cut a check. He's going to be over the luxury tax till the day he dies. That's another thing real quick. Mets are not getting under the luxury tax anytime soon. Kiss that dream goodbye. So
yeah, once you sign Juan Soto, forget about it.
It's 100%. So that's my final say on it. You guys know where I stand.
Especially bring that casino in, baby. Yep. Bring it in. Put the more money in Stevie's pockets.
Boom, baby. Come on.
He reinvested. But, guys, that's all we got for you guys. I know a ton of comments we didn't get to. Like I said, if you want to be locked in, guaranteed to get your comments right, consider becoming a member. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back to you with a live. And heads up, make sure those notifications are on, because if anything drops, I'm typically making a video within the first couple of hours explaining the full breakdown for you guys, bringing the honest take of our fan base, because I am not a talking head for the team, refuse to be, but that's all we got for you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. God bless, and let's go.
Let's.
Peace.